Radio and Inspire FM, and the purpose of our show is to encourage, inspire, and empower you so that you can achieve bigger and better things in your life and in your business. Now, as always, we would love for you to get involved. You can email us on studio@salamradio.co.uk. You can text and WhatsApp us on 07745 278 978, or you can send us a message through Facebook. And we always enjoy your interactions, your questions, and I can also say that our interviewees also love your engaging questions. So please do support us, and please do keep sending in your questions. Tonight we were supposed to have Brian Soanes on the radio. He is a entrepreneur and runs a business called the Business Club in Peterborough, but unfortunately I haven't heard back from him, and therefore I've summarized that or concluded that he must be off sick, because usually he is very good at responding, and I'm hoping we'll be able to invite him to the show in the near future. What that means though for you is that we've got really good news, and you have a blank check to send us as many questions as you like, based around either accountancy or business growth, business development, leadership and management, and Haseeb and I will attempt to answer as many of those questions for you as possible. We haven't really done this before, but seeing that our guest isn't here, we would love for you to get involved and ask us some really challenging questions. Coming back to Ronaldo and Messi, Haseeb, what do you think makes them really good players, and what attributes are there that makes them really good players, which perhaps people could use in a business context?
I think from what I've looked at some articles previously about Ronaldo, and it's hard work that has really paid off for him, because something that he used to do when he was earlier at Manchester United in his earlier on in his career. He used to stay behind. He used to be the first one in and the last one out, last one off the pitch, and he used to keep practicing, and also discipline, because he had a set time of sleeping. There's a way that he doesn't look at his phone for the before he goes to sleep for the first, before 3 hours before he goes to sleep. So it's dedication and hard work that has really paid off, and sometimes you need a bit of luck as well, of course, in life. But that has really paid off for, especially for Ronaldo, because he had the tricks and so forth, but he was rough around the edges when he started his football. But the hard work has really paid off for him. And
what kind of hard work can business owners do in order to improve their respective businesses, do you think?
I think first of all, of course, hard work comes into it. Second of all, as you mentioned earlier, before as well, is being smart in the way they work, and also if they have a team around them, aspire the team to work hard and have their goals and visions in mind, and make sure the team knows what the visions are, and they have to aspire to work towards that, and do not give up on failures. Keep trying and keep trying.
Yeah, good. That's good advice. Now, seeing that Brian isn't here, I think I'll touch on networking and business clubs, because I'm fortunate enough to sometimes go up and down the country and speak to different organizations, and through that process I also end up speaking to some networking and business clubs. And what I find is they are exceptionally good at helping business owners build confidence, also to build their network, as one of my friends, Rob Moore, who hopefully will invite as an interviewee in the forthcoming weeks, says that your net worth or your network is your net worth. So the bigger your network, the better it is. And because this is a Muslim community radio station, although of course we are open to all listeners, what I usually find is that there's not many Muslims who tend to go to these networking clubs. I'm not saying there aren't any at all, but there aren't that many, and I can't explain why that is. But what I would say is that it would be good for people to, for our listeners to go out and try some of these networking clubs, because not only will you build connections for your own business, but you'll meet people who've either been through a similar challenge to yours or are going through a challenge which you're going through. And being in business can be a very lonely business in itself, because sometimes you just feel like you've got no one to talk to, no one shares your pain or understands your problems. So being around like-minded people gives you the opportunity to see things from a very different perspective. And I also appreciate that networking can be quite daunting, and yet once you get used to it, it's pretty easy. So I'm pretty much an introvert, so if I walk into a room, I know you won't believe this, Haseeb, but I'm not always very keen to be the most popular person in the room, or start talking to everybody. But over the years, I've learned that you need to break the ice and start talking to people and being interested in what they have to say, as opposed to telling them all about you. So networking is a good medium. I would strongly suggest and recommend you do it. Always take some business cards with you and just break the ice by asking somebody, how's your day been today? And then ask them a question about what do they do in their pastime. Do they have family, children? So rather than focusing on business questions, focus on personal questions. And people like talking about themselves and their hobbies and their pastimes and their family, and then through that you can then start talking about business, and that will help you build your confidence. It also shows the other person that you're interested in them. So if they think that you're interested in them, they'll find you interesting, and once they find you interesting, then you can start building and forming relationships. And the beauty of that is, once you get to know other businesses who complement what you do, they'll give you referrals. So when you go out there and speak to most business owners and say, where do you get most of your business from? The most common question, be it small, medium or large business, they'll say most of our business comes through word of mouth, from anywhere from say 20-30% up to 90 to 100%. And yet when you ask them, what do you do to cultivate that, they just give you a blank look, as in, we're hoping we do a really good job and our clients or customers or patients refer us to others. And it doesn't quite work like that, because their customers, clients or patients have a very different agenda to theirs. And the last thing they're thinking about is, can I get my accountant, lawyer, doctor, dentist more referrals? Because that's not on their agenda, believe it or not. But if you can work with introducers who complement your business, they are more likely to give you referrals. And of course, if you can cultivate a system whereby you can encourage your clients, customers and patients to give you referrals, even better.
Also, I think is when people go to networking clubs, they expect instant referrals. Something you could shed some light on there is why, if, for example, I'm going to a networking club, I've been there 3-4 times, I haven't got any referrals for any work, and so I think, no, there's no point going to this business networking club. What other things should I be looking at, saying, apart from referrals, what am I gaining from this business networking club?
Yeah, I mean, it takes time, because it's the old 3-step model about know, like and trust. So first people need to get to know you. Once they get to know you, then they'll like you or they'll dislike you. Let's just focus on liking tonight. They'll like you, say, oh, Haseeb's a good guy. He gets me, I get him. He comes across as being very professional. He knows his stuff. I can talk to him. I can connect with him. He's the kind of guy who will probably attract the kind of clients that I attract, because we seem to be very similar. Through that, then you build trust. Once you build trust, they will then send you referrals. Unfortunately, if anybody thinks they can do that in the first 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 meetings, then they are mistaken, because that just doesn't happen. At best, it'll probably take you 3 months and you may receive a referral. Usually it takes 6 to 9 months for people to get to know you, and then they'll start giving you referrals. But the best way to get referrals is to give referrals. So if you start giving first, people see that you're generous, you're not a hunter, so if a very good networking club is BNI, Business Network International, it's the biggest networking franchise in the world, and they talk about farmers and hunters. So farmers are those people who invest in relationships, so they sow those seeds and then harvest those seeds, and then wait for the fruits of their labor in weeks, months and years to come. Whereas a hunter goes in there and says, okay, what can I get out of this particular networking club in the next 3 months? And what I found is people don't like farm hunters because they know that you are there just for yourself. But everybody likes farmers. So we need to adopt that mindset in terms of how do we become a farmer, how do we cultivate relationships, and then once we've built that trust, how do we then give referrals and then in return get referrals? Because it's the law of reciprocation. If you give somebody something, they are more likely to give you something back in return. Be it if you buy somebody a meal, although I'm sure there's one or two exceptions of people that come into your mind, Haseeb. But apart from those, no names mentioned, people will usually say, okay, next time I'll buy you a meal. If somebody gives you a lift, I know you're an avid Manchester United fan, and I do feel sorry for you, especially after last week. But if you take them to Old Trafford in your car, it's likely that the next time you go, they'll say, I'll take my car. So it's the law of reciprocation. I find it difficult sometimes to say that word. The law of reciprocation. So the more you give, the more you get in return. So it's those kind of things that I find tend to work really well. And we have our first question. And as always, Fayaz has the record for always, without fail, sending us the first question. And I must applaud him for his efforts. Not only is he enthusiastic, he always sends very smart questions. And his question is, I find your business club franchise model is getting more greedy and getting away from original principles and is run more like commercial business. How can you talk into bringing a prospective customer? So, most people who've set up business clubs, in my experience, really do it because they like networking. They also appreciate that there is a gap in the market in terms of there's not enough business being passed in a particular area, or that the existing business clubs perhaps aren't doing enough to get businesses together. Of course, the person who owns the business club is running that particular venture as a business, so they are looking to earn money, but they are very keen to connect people together. They are very, very good connectors. Not only do they have good contacts themselves, they will go out their way to say, okay, Haseeb, you're an accountant, I think you'll work really well with this particular solicitor, let me put you together. Or they'll say, okay, let me connect you with an IFA, because you're both in the service industry, so your clients who are doing reasonably well may require the services of an IFA, and vice versa, an IFA being an independent financial advisor. So they tend to be good at connecting. Are some business club owners greedy? I don't know, but the ones that I've generally met seem to be very good. They have a very good ethos, and they are very helpful. What's your experience, Haseeb? Because I know you've been to a couple of business clubs in Peterborough.
My experience is, you do find some that are there for the commercial ones, but once you attend a few of them, you realise which ones are commercial and which ones are not commercials. As you said, is the person that's hosting the business club, if they're accommodating and are listening to you, and what would you like from the business club, and refer you to maybe not refer, just get together, talk, be open about what you want to do, also get in contact with other businesses that could help you. Them sort of business club, you're thinking, yeah, this is for me, this helps me, because the person who's hosting it is trying to help me what I'm looking for. And I think after a while you find out which one's commercial and which one's not there for the commercial reasons. But you got to attend a few to realise that.
Yeah, good. Another question that's come in is, what's your feeling about the red tape in business we have today, and will it get any better with Brexit? What are your thoughts? So my personal thoughts are that red tape will get worse, because although at the minute we have a lot of uncertainty about how we are going to trade, and under what terms we are going to trade. We don't know what's happening with the customs union, with the free movement of trade, and then we're being told that we will have some kind of a deal. Then we're being told no deal is better than a bad deal. So I don't think we know what's going on. But from what I can see, is when we officially leave the European Union, once we've got this deal, although Article 50 has been invoked, once we know exactly where we are, I think it's going to get pretty tough because there'll be more red tape, especially when dealing with people within the European Union, and the bureaucracy for small business especially would be so much that you'll probably have to employ somebody just to understand all the rules and legislation. So I can see tough times ahead, and that's not me being pessimistic. That's just me looking at how easy is it today, because we're part of the European Union, and once we lose that particular advantage, as I see it, it's just going to get tougher. Do you have any thoughts on that, Haseeb?
No, I think you mentioned quite a few good things. What the main problems are is no one knows where they are at the moment, and that becomes difficult to predict what's going to happen in the future. There's too many uncertainties, as you said, and when there's too many uncertainties, you don't know where to go. Also, another question I was going to ask you, Shaz, was regarding networking clubs. Was some people might think, why do I need to go to networking clubs where the social media there? I can see what businesses are there. I know what's good for me. I can approach them. But that face to face, what's the difference between the face to face and social media? Because some people just think, I sit down, I can see in the computer, who should I approach? I can approach, make that mind myself. What's different to a networking club? Going to a networking club?
It's very, very different, because as human beings, we're hardwired to have contact and interaction with other human beings. And there's nothing like sitting with somebody and seeing the whites of their eyes, the facial expressions, the body language, how they come across, tells you a lot about a person. So if I could talk to somebody on the phone once a month, for example, over a 6-month period, and I won't get to know them as well as spending an hour with them face to face in a room or in a setting where we are together. So having that face-to-face interaction is very important, and it really helps you build a much better relationship. I think it's difficult building relationships on social media because people are writing responses or comments, and what somebody writes and how somebody interprets it are two very different things, and the interpretation depends on the person's particular mood, how they're feeling at the time, what thoughts are going through their head, what their level of understanding in English is. So a lot of things can also be misinterpreted. So you can't really have a proper conversation on social media unless you're using a different platform like Skype or Zoom or something, which obviously isn't social media. But even then, that connection of being able to see each other physically in a room or in an environment where you're together is very different to talking interactively through Skype or Zoom or any other platform. So I think it's important to meet people because that enables you to get to know them much better.
Oh, that's very good. Thank you, Shaz.
Another question we have is, with the cost of living going above inflation, what are your thoughts on a living wage rather than a minimum wage? I personally am, and that's a bit of perhaps partly a political question, I guess, and partly a business question. So I'll leave the political aspect out of it and focus on the business element. I think it's a fantastic idea because there's lots of people out there who are struggling, who are working on a very low wage. So having a living wage which says this amount of money will ensure to some extent that you can have a good life is a really good thing. And if you speak to most business owners out there, they really do want to look after their workforce. They care about their employees, their staff members, their team members, call them what you like. And they want them to do well. But sometimes they are not able to pay them as much as they'd like because they don't have the finances or the resources. So although this is kind of going to push them to some extent to go outside their comfort zone, pay them more than what they can afford, it's also going to encourage them to think differently. So the first thing that they'll probably do is increase their prices. Say, okay, I'm paying £2,000 extra per month to my workforce because of the living wage. Therefore, they need to find that £2,000 extra in their business. So either they get new customers, clients, or patients, or they increase their prices, or they reduce their expenses. Now, they could do all three if they wanted to, and through that, they'll then be able to hopefully afford the additional £2,000 cap per month. So I think the living wage is very good. We started with the minimum wage. Oh God, I'm probably showing you my age now. Probably 15, 16 years ago, or somewhere like that. And that's been really good. But the living wage is going to enable us to go up a notch or two. And being the fifth, sixth largest economy in the world, we should be proud that we have such a good workforce. We have a strong economy, and we should pay our employees more wherever possible. So I am a big fan of the living wage.
No, also living wage. If you pay the staff a living wage, that results in the staff members being happy. The output of the work will be good as well, because as you said, they're always struggling. They're always thinking about other things apart from work. So a living wage will calm the nerves on there. They can pay the bills, and they'll be happier at Team Force, which will result in a better output of work and a happier team.
Well, the other argument then, Haseeb, would be if one thinks that paying your staff members means that they'll be happier and the output will be better, why don't people pay them more now? Why do we have to wait for the living wage for that to happen?
I think the simple reason is some just don't think is they're getting by, no one's complaining, and they are getting the results of the business that they expect to get the results of the business, and they're getting by and thinking, why change? And save some money. Yeah,
but partly, if you know you're going to get better results, why wouldn't you?
That's the risk some don't like taking.
Your workforce, but I think as human beings, we're complicated creatures, and I think you're probably right. We think if we can get away with paying £8.50 or £9, why pay £10 or £11? But sometimes that's very short-term thinking. Another question we've had come in is, which accounting application do you prefer most and why? I'll let you answer that, Haseeb.
Accounting application, I think we mentioned this before as well. A Xero. Why that simply is, Xero is a good accounting application is because it's simple to use, it's easy to use, and it's live, and you can see the results on there on an instant basis. If you want to go there today, see where you are in business, where you stand, it's there for you. The numbers are there, as long as you enter the numbers yourself, and it's user friendly.
Yeah, so I think cloud accounting is extremely popular, more so than your old school pieces of software, without mentioning any names. And the main two providers are Xero and QuickBooks, and they seem to have a very good solution, and they are very popular solutions. What I like about them is they're really easy to use, and they've changed the way small businesses can actually use their finance function, which is brilliant. And we'll talk about that after the break, Haseeb, because we're just about to go to a break, and we've covered networking, we've touched on business clubs, we've talked a bit about Brexit and the living and minimum wage, and we're talking about accounting software. So listeners, please do join us after the break. Please do send us your questions, and inshallah we'll do our best to answer them. See you in a few moments. Assalamu alaikum.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allah. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا
الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة وابعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته. اللهم آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم بك نحيا وبك نموت وإليك المصير. رضينا بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبمحمد صلى الله عليه وسلم نبيا ورسولا.
السلام عليكم وبسم الله. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كن في الدنيا كأنك غريب أو عابر السبيل. That be in this world as if you were a stranger or a traveller.
This is Salaam Radio, Peterborough's Muslim. This is Salaam Radio, Peterborough's Muslim Community Radio, broadcasting on 106.2 FM and online.
Assalamu alaikum, welcome back. You're listening to Salaam Radio on 106.2 FM and Inspire FM on 105.1 FM. This is the Empower Hour show with me, Shaz Nawaz, and I have my co-host Mohammed Haseeb with me. The purpose of the Empower Hour show is to encourage, inspire and empower you so that you can create a bigger and a better business. And how we do that is by inviting leading authorities in different aspects of business to share their expertise, knowledge, experience, and hopefully that will unlock some key ideas for you. Tonight we were supposed to have Brian Soanes from the Business Club, which is based in Peterborough, but unfortunately I've not been able to get through to him, which tells me that he is probably off sick, but we will endeavour to invite him back in forthcoming weeks. We would love for you to get involved in the show, especially tonight, because pretty much you have an open checkbook. You can ask us any question you like in the field of business, and you can do that by emailing us on studio@salamradio.co.uk. You can text and WhatsApp us on 077 45 278 978, or you can send us a message through Facebook. So before the break, Haseeb, you were talking about accounting software. So you mentioned Xero. Are there any others that you think our listeners can benefit from?
There's Sage, QuickBooks, any cloud accounting that they can use. cloud accounting is fantastic. You can use it anywhere. You can use your home office. You're out and about on there. You can do your accounts there while you know, for example, you're on a journey on a train. You can do your accounts there. So cloud accounting is a fantastic application to use, and that's something I would, if to the listeners, I would recommend using any cloud application that's out there.
Good. Then the next question we have is, a major challenge for small businesses is an inability to compete with larger companies on buying power. Large chains typically can negotiate favorable costs with suppliers because of their volume, so bulk buying. Single store operations and small chains don't have the same leverage. How can small businesses compete, in your opinion?
Small businesses, how they can compete with large ones is, small businesses should have a set target market on there. Do their best to look around for the cheapest prices and use different sort of ways to target the customer base locally, what they have, and have targets that they can meet, which are reasonable. Because the buying power for bigger businesses is a lot better than small businesses. I think also the service that they get when the customers use the service, use from yourself, that's something you can do a lot better than the big companies, because they're not individual services that the big companies do. So as a small business, what you can do is have a personal sort of service for the individual customers, and that way they remember. Also, the customer will think, I'm getting preference here. At least I've been talked to, I've been listened to, and this person knows what products I want and will get the best deal for me. So the personal touch a customer that has, it makes a big effect.
Absolutely, you're right. I think the main point there really is small businesses will find it very difficult to compete with larger businesses, and sometimes small businesses do make the mistake of trying to replicate what larger businesses are doing. So, for example, if you're a small drinks provider and you look at Coca-Cola and think they spend so much money on advertising, on billboards, on sponsoring football teams or other sports teams and advertising on TV, let me do the same. And if you try and do that, you'll be wasting all your money. So you have to think very differently. And I think the key point that you touched on was providing a more personal service. Larger corporates will struggle to do that just because of the sheer size of their business, and they have so many cumbersome processes sometimes, and processes are a good thing, but sometimes they're a bit of an overkill, which doesn't allow enough flexibility to the people on the ground to be able to connect with their customers. So I think as a small business, you have that flexibility. Usually the business owner works in the business and they are the most enthusiastic about their business for obvious reasons. So focusing on that personal service, focusing on being different, and also focusing on attracting local customers, because what I find is most local customers prefer to shop from independents. They like that. They want to support the local business community. So as a small business, I think you should focus on that, leverage that. Again, if you network and go to business clubs, you'll meet other like-minded businesses who are already doing some of that, and you can use their knowledge and build contacts with the local business, with the local clientele. That is very useful, but don't try to directly compete with the larger businesses, because you will struggle. Here's one of your favorite questions, Haseeb. I think this listener knew that you would enjoy answering this question. Every business has an obligation to ensure they pay the correct amount of tax to HMRC. But that doesn't mean you should ignore legitimate tax breaks or fail to take account for deductible business expenses. What's the most overseen tax breaks small businesses miss?
I think a lot of them miss where they think that doesn't make much difference regarding expenses. It could be the telephone bill if they're using their office at home. Using office at home, that's an expense that they can claim there. Plant and machinery, this is something they can deduct. They can deduct plant and machinery for taxable reasons, and also travel. When they travel around, claiming that's something that they miss, and that's something that businesses think that they can't claim. But once you add them up over the year, they do add to a reasonable amount. which helps them regarding the putting expenses into their into their accounts. And
yeah, so with travel, you have two options. You can either have a company car, and if you're a limited company and you have a company car and you're using it for personal use, which more often is the case, you'll have to pay benefit in kind tax, and that can be quite expensive depending on your car. So the better thing to do there is to keep a mileage log and use your personal car for the first 10,000 miles in a tax year. A tax year starts from 6th of April and ends in the following April. You can claim 45 pence a mile for the first 10,000 miles, and thereafter 25 pence per mile. So you're right to see people do miss out on business mileage. Lots of people, especially small business owners, do work from home, so they can claim home of use they can claim their costs of using their home as an office. That's something which people miss out on. Again, broadband and internet at home, you can claim that. Lots of people I find also fail to make pension contributions. So that's a very common one, and the government's reasonably generous. Not as much as they used to be, but still quite generous. You can make up to £40,000 pension contributions every year, and you can claim that as an expense. That's popular. What I also find is lots of people have their partner, spouse working for them, but they don't use their allowance. So everybody has a personal allowance. I don't remember the exact figure because I don't have to deal with that every day, luckily, because I have some good team members, but it's about 11,500 or 11,900. So if your spouse works for you, add them to the payroll, pay them what you would pay at commercial rates, use their personal allowance, because if you don't use it, you lose it. So those are some of the common expenses that people tend to miss out. Of course, there's a big long list of other expenses, but if we start going through every one, not only will we be here for longer than our time, I think, Haseeb, it will maybe bore some people, because it'd be just like reading a list. So perhaps that's something which we can cover in a forthcoming show. And thank you very much for that question. I think that's a brilliant question.
That is, definitely.
Our listeners are fantastic today, Haseeb. They are sending us lots of questions because they can see that they have an open checkbook. So if you've just joined us, Assalamu alaikum and welcome. You're listening to Salaam Radio on 106.2 FM and Inspire FM on 105.1 FM. This is the Empower Hour show. I'm your host, Shaz Nawaz, and I have with me Mohammed Haseeb. The purpose of the Empower Hour show is to encourage, inspire and empower you, and we do that usually by inviting leading authorities who share their knowledge, experience and expertise so that you can unlock some of your key challenges. But as we don't have a guest tonight, we've invited you to ask as many questions as you like, and so far you're doing a brilliant job. So if you would like to ask a question, please email us on studio@salamradio.co.uk. You can text and WhatsApp us on 077 45 278 978, or you can send us a message through Facebook, and we'd be delighted to hear from you. The next question, Haseeb, is what business, if any, will benefit from Brexit?
What business, if any, will benefit from Brexit?
While you think about the answer, I think all businesses will benefit from Brexit. That's because a guy called Napoleon Hill, who wrote a fantastic book called Think and Grow Rich, and having interviewed so many people previously in another guise, what I found was that Think and Grow Rich was one of the few books which most successful entrepreneurs attributed to their success. So it's a book which I think I have recommended before on this particular show, but if you haven't read it, please do read it. And in there, the author Napoleon Hill says, through every adversity lie the seeds of equal or greater opportunity. And I think he's absolutely right. Once we're in a particular situation, once we get over the fact of why did this happen to me, why now, why couldn't it be somebody else, why is it always me? So having that victim mentality, once you get over that and you think, okay, I'm in this particular challenge, I'm cornered, I'm snookered, how do I get out of it? And that's when you start to think differently, you start asking very smart questions, I think the quality of your questions determine the quality of your outcome and your results. So once you start asking yourself good questions, you'll start finding better answers, and the better answers will enable you to achieve better results. So once everybody gets over the fact that we are most likely going to leave the European Union, unless we have a second referendum, but again, just keeping away from politics, if we do leave Brexit, which is the most likely outcome right now, in my opinion, then we will start thinking differently, and I think we'll all benefit, because we'll think we're all in the same boat. Now, how do we work together to improve our businesses? So I think everybody's going to benefit. It's just by the time we get there in our mind, it may just take a bit of time. And something else which I do, which I learned from a guy called Jim Rohn, who is a personal, or was a personal development guru from America, and he said people always moan about, why me, why now, why not somebody else. So his questions were, why not you, why not now? So, and I think that that's a good way to flip things. So, why me, why not me, why now, why not now? And if you can start thinking like that and start flipping everything and saying, this is every challenge is an opportunity, that usually is a very good way to be able to build a better business. Any further thoughts, Haseeb, or do you think I've kind of covered that?
I think you covered that very well, Shaz.
Okay, thank you very much. I always look for your approval.
You would get very far if you did all the time.
Oh yes. Maybe we should also talk about seeking approval. So if we have enough time, and if we can cover all these questions, because they are rolling in thick and fast. And if you've just joined us, Assalamu alaikum, welcome, and thank you for joining us on the Empower Hour show. I'm Shaz Nawaz, and I'm here with my co-host Mohammed Haseeb. You're listening to Salaam Radio on 106.2 FM and Inspire FM on 105.1 FM. Please do get involved. We always love your questions and your interaction. You can email us on studio@salamradio.co.uk. You can text and WhatsApp us on 077 45 278 978, or you can send us a message through Facebook. The next question, Haseeb, is, although our questioner has addressed this question to me, we'll both try and answer it, but I'll read the question as it's written, which is, Shaz, what's your thoughts on billionaires using the domicile ruling, living abroad and paying little or no taxes in the UK? That's a very good question, and again, that's partly a political question, and I'm trying to stay away from politics as much as I can for obvious reasons. But I think if you're going to, the tax rules are the tax rules, and if somebody can be domiciled outside the UK, and being domiciled is not as easy as some people think, but if you can be, then I don't see any harm in that. But there are rules for when you bring money into the UK, you will be taxed on it. But I'm always a big believer that if you're born in the UK and the country's invested in you, and you end up becoming rich, famous, a celebrity, and or a leading entrepreneur, then it's our duty to pay back into the system. I think that's always good. And like we were talking about earlier in the show, about the more you give, the more you gain. If you give back to society, society will give back more to you. So I'm not a big fan of saying, okay, now that I'm making lots of money, let me be domiciled in a country which is more tax advantageous. I mean, by all means do that, but I think pay back society, the same society who invested in you. So those are my limited thoughts. Anything you'd like to add, Haseeb?
No, I think you answered that question perfectly well. Also, before Shaz, we've got many questions. There's something you just touched upon before, seeking approval. I think a lot of people go through that, seeking approval from others. How do people get away from seeking approval? Because it's all about having approval from someone else. I'll do something, not using the own initiative. I'm something, I'm confident I can go ahead with this idea, do it. But if only this XYZ person tells me, yes, it's a good idea, go ahead with it. and only then I will go ahead with it.
I mean, everybody wants to be liked. That's just the way life is, and all of us have an ego. Some are brave and courageous enough to admit it. Others will say, "Oh, I don't have an ego. I'm very humble. I'm very modest." It's like people saying to you, "Oh, I'm a very honest person," or "I never lie," or "To be honest with you." The minute that they pre-qualify by using those kind of statements, tells you that they are exactly what they're saying they aren't. In my experience, and I'm not saying that applies to everybody. So we all have an ego. We all like to be liked, or most of us, should I say, rather than generalizing. And we like approval. If someone says, "Oh, Haseeb, you're really clever," or "That's a really good question," or "You're doing really well. Can I ask you a question?" Blah blah blah. That makes you feel good too. So I mean, I'm all for using positive language, encouraging others. But I think when you start seeking the approval of others, you get to a stage where you'll find, no matter what you do, not everybody is going to approve of you. So why seek somebody's approval when you can approve of yourself? So rather than thinking, "Oh, I hope if I do X being something for you, Haseeb, and Haseeb will like it," you might not like it. So I may never get your approval. And some people live that life where they just go the extra mile, keep doing more and more and more for somebody, and that person never really approves of them. And then in the end, they're disappointed, saying, "Oh, I did this 999 things for Mr. X, and they're just ungrateful. They've never appreciated them." That's because underlying issue is that they were seeking their approval, and they never received the approval. So why not approve of yourself? Once you approve of yourself, what you'll find is others will approve of you too. Now, some may see you sometimes as being overconfident, arrogant, but that's their perception, and we can't really control what people think of us to some extent. What we can do is have a very clear set of values. So these are the things that I believe in. This is how I live and breathe my life, and I will always live according to my values. So have around 3 to 5 values that they tend to work well, and every time something isn't working for you, go back to those values and say, "This is what I believe in, this is what I stand for. Looking at these values, how do I address this particular situation?" And what you'll find is, once you're clear on your values, whenever you have a problem, go back to your values and think, using these values, what should I do next? And your values will never ever misguide you. And most people have values, but they don't know what those values are. So when they become unstuck, they don't know what to do. So I would say, don't seek the approval of others. Approve of yourself. Once you do that, hopefully you'll always make the right choice. And sometimes you will make mistakes, and that's fine. Through mistakes, you'll become tougher, harder, and better. But more often than not, inshallah, you'll make the right choice. Yeah, and through that, others will approve of you.
Some very sound advice. Brilliant. Hope the listeners are listening to that.
You can tell I've been
they're taking notes of that.
Around the block a few times with that, and that took me quite a while to learn. Another question we have is one of our very attentive listeners is saying, "Shaz, you touched on earlier about the lack of Asian businesses using a business club. How about you starting one that will be phenomenal, and we must start taking Asian businesses to the next level?" That's a fantastic suggestion, and unfortunately, you're not the first person to suggest that to me. And I think it would be a very good idea, because people have said to me that there are Asian business clubs in Leicester, Birmingham, Manchester, London. So why don't we have one in Peterborough? And I'm not philosophically against that as such, but I just don't have the time to set one up. And also, I'm a big believer of diversity, and I think ring fencing and saying, "Oh, this particular club is only for Asian people, or is for a particular sex or a particular gender, or for a particular people of a particular faith," I'm not a big fan of that, because I think diversity brings people who bring a different perspective. They'll challenge you. They'll have different values. Values which are good and we can learn from, and they also have a different set of knowledge, experience and expertise which once you put it into the overall mix, will help us find better outcomes. So I'm more passionate about that, and I believe that works better. So my suggestion will be, rather than starting a new one, why not already join an existing one? And if you see any gaps there, recommend or suggest or advise the existing networking clubs on how they can get better. And they always love their members to get involved. So if you said, can I get involved and help you improve the club? I mean, somebody would be rather naive to say, oh no, I don't want you to help me out. They're all there looking for volunteers to help them out. So I think that is always a good thing. We touched on social media previously, and is there anything else that you would like to add about social media, Haseeb?
I think social media, as I said, use it appropriately and have the clarity of why you're using it and who you're targeting. Because sometimes you go off the boil and use anyone. Because social media, it is you got to be careful on there, and sometimes you got to be careful for different reasons. But social media is a good tool to have, and a use that you can be used effectively if used the right way. Some problems what people have in social media is people do not know what the target customers are, and they're targeting everyone, and they don't get any feedback, they don't get any replies back, and for that reason they think it doesn't work. So before you set up any sort of advertising or try to promote your business on social media, be very careful who your customers are. Be very clear who they are and how you want to target them, because otherwise sometimes you could be wasting money on targeting customers that really do not want your product.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think social media does take up a lot of time, and then you can become very addicted to it. So from a business perspective, have a very clear strategy in terms of finding out where your customers are and how you are going to use social media to leverage your marketing, rather than just being on there and posting general random things. And our interviewee last week, or our guest last week, I think shared some fantastic advice, especially about the 30-30-30-10, about
fantastic.
how to spend or what type of content to have on there. And she said only spend 10% of the time talking about yourself, and spend the rest of the time talking about other people. And that was very, very good advice. Some other advice which I would like to share is that I find most people don't stand up and speak as much as they could do. So generally speaking, from my own experiences, I used to be a very shy speaker, not like I shared earlier. I was an introvert, and then when I realized that speaking is very impactful, very powerful, I started to learn how to become a better speaker. I still am learning to become a better speaker. I think I'm average at best, if that. I'm sure many would argue that I've got a long way to go to become average, in fact. But my strong recommendation and suggestion will be learn the art of speaking, because once you do, you can influence, persuade, connect better with people, and that really will transform your business and your life. And on that note, Haseeb, we've got no more questions coming in, and I think we've had a very good show. So thank you very much, listeners.
Thank you
for all your questions, for supporting us tonight. Next week, Kasim has lined up a very special guest, and we will keep that a surprise until next week. Thank you very much, and see you next week. Assalamu alaikum.